Whenever you talk about the governor's race in Texas and the Republican field of Perry and Hutchison, you get people saying, what about Debra Medina? So here she is right now on our airwaves, 599-5555, with a question or a comment for the other Republican running for governor in 2010. And this is your first run ever for public office, right?
Correct. I've been a Republican county chair and was in the middle of my third term there, but this is the least of these for such a time as this, someone who's just an average, hard-working Texan.
What about your, let's talk about the L word. I mean, your viewpoints really line up with the libertarians. You're a big fan of Ron Paul, who's a hero to libertarians, uppercase L as well as lowercase l. Why aren't you running as the libertarian candidate for governor instead of the Republican candidate, given especially the fiscal baggage that the Republican Party carries these days?
Well, one of the things I've had to say to my own executive committee is we're not, most things in our life, we're not Christian because of the way our neighbors behave or the way our pastor behaves necessarily. I think those of us that claim Christianity as our faith would say it's because we subscribe to biblical truth. I'm not Republican because of the way my elected officials behave. I'm Republican because I've been fighting for the values that party has historically stood for. I certainly see that we've drifted in our behavior far from that limited government, small government base. But I've been working within the Republican Party hard since the early 90s and championing those ideas that have historically been part of the Republican Party. It's not been until actually I launched this race, I think was the first time anyone ever said, I think she's really a libertarian instead. I'm pro-life and I subscribe to those things that the Republican Party has historically stood for. So that's where I am. It's where I've always worked, and it's where I've chosen to spend my political time and energy.
Rick Perry is going to have a very hard time in San Antonio because of this toll road issue. We were talking this morning about the alternatives to tolling Highway 281 and 1604. Where do you come down on toll roads in Texas, and what would your role be as governor in these very emotional fights that are going on all over the state?
Well, I think, I have to keep going back to our Constitution and to those fundamental ideas about government. Our I guess, motto, if we have one, is life, liberty, and property, and we certainly see lots of property rights violations in the toll road plans that exist. We see tremendous inefficiency in the organization and operation of TxDOT. I think Turf in your area has done a terrific job of pointing out some of the overspending and just the mismanagement. So we have lots of opportunities in Texas to take a hard look at what we're doing in government. We know government doesn't do much well, and relook at locally and across the state how to fund more appropriately and how to fund efficiently without cost overruns, without long time frames. I think y'all have got a couple of interchanges up there, U-turn lanes and things that are taking years to build what used to take 6 or 8 months to get accomplished, and that just drives cost up. So we've got to look across the board. Our team is doing that. I think we've gotten fat and lazy in Texas as far as a lot of our government goes, and we can't afford that. As a state, we're going to have to get lean and mean and efficient again, and I believe that the grassroots has had enough of the overspending, and they're going to look for leadership, not just in the governor's office, but all across at county commissioner, city council, and state representative levels for people who really are serious about spending those government dollars as efficiently as possible.
I certainly agree with you about limited government and sort of the Teddy Roosevelt idea that government should do a few things but do them very vigorously. One of those things, to me, is infrastructure. What is your position on principle as far as the government ever outsourcing ownership of or management of a roadway, a bridge, et cetera, to a private company or even a foreign private company?
I've seen some writing about privatizing roads. Certainly, as has been proposed currently, I think that's bad policy. I agree with you that infrastructure is one of the key things that we expect to see government doing. And one of the things we've been talking about a lot, Jack, is the fact that while we have doubled health care spending in Texas, we've doubled and this is by the state of Texas. We've doubled health care. We've nearly doubled education in the last 8 years. We've seen transportation spending, Department of Transportation spending actually decline by 1%. We're spending 1% less today than we spent 8 years ago. Our priorities are not in the right place. We need management. We need serious management and leadership coming out of Austin, and I think instead we've seen our leadership currying favor with the federal government. We've seen federal subsidy increase. We've seen ties to the federal government strengthened. We've certainly seen a lot of allegiance to international banking and international business interest. I'm looking for allegiance to the Texas taxpayer and the Texas citizen, and I think many across Texas are singing that same song with us.
KTSA News Times 1230. We're talking to Republican candidate for governor Debra Medina, and Vincent has a question on KTSA. Go ahead, Vincent.
Yes. What are you going to do to get the illegal aliens out of Texas? I know what your website says. You're saying the exact same thing as everyone else, Democrat, Republican, that you're against amnesty. You think the law should be followed. But I'm asking you specifically, what are you going to do to get the illegal aliens out of here?
All right, what's that answer, Debra Medina?
I think one of the things, Vincent, that we do find often from our elected officials is that they do exactly that. I haven't articulated any plans because I don't know that anybody has those answers right now. We're working hard to find solutions that are workable solutions. That doesn't, I've kind of jokingly said, you don't become a candidate and get access to a higher level of Google where therein lies the illegal immigration plan for the state of Texas. It is complex. And I'm not one who wants to just throw out political rhetoric so people will say, okay, she told us what we wanted to hear. The reality is business issues, ag issues, drug war issues, terrorist issues, law enforcement issues, all are involved in that, and we haven't seen anybody really advocating a plan that's workable that can get buy-in from all across that spectrum. I'm doing that work. I'm working hard to talk to as many of those players as we can to make sure that when we start championing a plan, it will be one that truly meets the needs of Texas. And I know that that's not what people want to hear, but what we need is leadership and not someone who will just throw out what we want to hear for the sake of
well, let's talk about some specific
vote.
things that are being proposed or that are being tried. For example, what is your position on the border fence?
I think that it doesn't fix anything. I think it spends a lot of money, but it doesn't really accomplish what it pretends to accomplish, and so it's probably not well invested, wisely invested dollars. It's also a federal stroke, I guess, if you will, to try to enforce that law. So I'm not sure that Texas has a lot to do with whether or not the fence gets built. I think what we need to be looking for is, in the absence of effective enforcement and leadership by the federal government, what will Texas do? What can Texas do to protect Texans?
Yeah, I mean, you're looking at several years of a very lenient pro-immigration, atmosphere in Washington, D.C. So essentially, whoever the next governor of Texas is will probably be out of step with a lot of that. Looking at the problem from the other side, are you in favor of being aggressive with employers, being aggressive about eliminating benefits that illegal immigrants are able to claim, things like that, removing some of the incentive for the illegal crossing?
Well, I guess, Jack, I want to go back for half a second. You said, we've had this pro-immigration national position for a number of years. I don't know that really anyone is saying we should be anti-immigration. Well, I think what we've had at the federal level is just an ignoring of the law. A state and a nation certainly has a need, a desire, and a responsibility to establish what its visitation policies are going to be. I think part of what we don't know and what we need to be talking about here in Texas is why are illegals coming here? Because you've got a lot of businesses in this state that say, I need that labor force, and yet we all want that labor force to be a legal one.